the international terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International. Airport thrummed with the restless energy of a world in motion. It was July 7th, 2025, and the sprawling hub, one of the busiest in America, buzzed with travelers weaving through a labyrinth of check-in counters, security lines, and duty-free shops. Overhead, digital screens flashed flight updates, while the hum of rolling suitcases and multilingual conversations filled the air. Amid this controlled chaos, a woman moved with quiet purpose toward the premium boarding lane, her tailored charcoal suit and understated elegance setting her apart from the harried crowds. Her name was Maya Thompson, a 38-year-old black CEO whose name was synonymous with innovation in the tech world. Few in the terminal knew that today, she was more than a passenger. She was the new controlling shareholder of GlobalSkies Airways, a major American airline teetering on the edge of a public relations crisis. Maya's presence was unassuming yet commanding. Her sleek leather briefcase, embossed with the logo of her company, NextGen Analytics, swung lightly at her side. She had built NextGen into a powerhouse, leveraging artificial intelligence to revolutionize data processing for industries from healthcare to transportation. Her latest triumph, finalized just hours ago, was the acquisition of a 51% stake in GlobalSkies, a move that made her not just a passenger, but the airline's most powerful decision-maker. Yet, as she approached the gleaming Diamond Elite Priority sign above the first-class lane, her platinum membership card and first-class ticket in hand, she braced for the familiar scrutiny she'd faced countless times before. The premium lane was a stark contrast to the snaking economy line, where families, students, and budget travelers jostled for space. Here, the air was quieter, the carpet cleaner, the staff trained to exude warmth, at least to those they deemed worthy. Maya's annual mileage, clocking over 150,000 miles a year for the past decade, had earned her the highest tier of loyalty status with GlobalSkies. But as she stepped forward, presenting her boarding pass for Seat 2A, the gate agent, Lauren Mitchell, barely glanced at the documents before her expression hardened. "Excuse me," Lauren called out, her voice sharp enough to turn heads. "Economy boarding is at Gate 12. Her tone carried an edge, a presumption that didn't bother hiding itself. Nearby passengers glanced over, some with curiosity, others with discomfort, as the words hung in the air like a challenge. Maya paused, her face a mask of practiced composure. She'd navigated these moments before, too many to count, and each time, she'd honed the art of responding without escalating. "I'm aware," she said evenly, her voice smooth but firm. "I'm flying first class." She extended her boarding pass and platinum card, the latter glinting under the terminal's harsh lights. Lauren's eyebrows shot up, her skepticism as blatant as her earlier dismissal. She took the documents, flipping the boarding pass over with exaggerated scrutiny, as if searching for evidence of fraud. Her fingers lingered on the platinum card, her eyes narrowing as she read the name, Maya Thompson, Diamond Elite member. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Across the adjacent premium lane, white passengers in business suits breezed through with cursory glances and warm smiles from other gate agents. A middle-aged man in a pinstripe suit handed over his ticket, received a nod and a "Welcome aboard, Mr. Reynolds," and was waved through without a second thought. "Diamond Elite status?" Lauren questioned, her tone laced with disbelief. The question wasn't about clarification, it was an accusation. "How did you get this status?" The words dripped with implication, as if Maya's presence in the premium lane defied some unspoken rule. Not "How long have you been a member?" Or "Do you fly often?" But asterisk, "How did you get this?" Asterisk a query that assumed her credentials were a mistake, a glitch, or worse, a deception. Maya's expression remained steady, though a familiar weariness settled in her chest. "The same way anyone does," she replied, her voice calm but cutting. I fly frequently for business. Over 150,000 miles a year, in fact. Her words were precise, a gentle reminder of her legitimacy, but Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line, unconvinced. Behind Maya, other premium passengers shifted impatiently, their murmurs growing audible. A woman in a designer blazer sighed, loudly, checking her watch. Yet Lauren seemed determined to prolong her impromptu investigation. "I have a situation here," she announced into her headset, loud enough for nearby travelers to hear. "I need supervisor verification at the premium lane." The word situation landed like a stone. A situation. A black woman with a first-class ticket and platinum status was, apparently, a problem requiring management intervention. Maya stood perfectly still, her posture impeccable, her heart rate steady. She'd learned long ago to control her reactions, to let the world's biases reveal themselves without giving them the satisfaction of her anger. But beneath her calm exterior, she cataloged every detail. Lauren's name badge, her tone, the way her eyes darted to her colleagues for validation. No detail would be forgotten. The supervisor, a tall man named Greg Harper with a permanent expression of mild annoyance, arrived with a sigh. "What's the issue?" he asked, addressing Lauren rather than Maya. "Verification needed for this passenger's premium status," Lauren replied, emphasizing passenger in a way that suggested doubt. Greg gave Maya's documents a perfunctory glance, his reluctance palpable, as if he'd hoped to find a reason to deny her access. "These appear to be in order," he said finally, handing the boarding pass back with a curt nod. "Proceed." Maya moved past the checkpoint, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. As she walked toward the jet bridge, she overheard Lauren whispered to another gate agent, probably using someone else's ticket. "They should put photo IDs on those premium cards." The words were meant to be private, but carried just far enough to sting. Maya's expression remained neutral, but she made a mental note. Lauren Mitchell. Gate 7. 10:47 a.m. Every interaction was a piece of evidence, a thread in the tapestry of systemic failure she'd come to unravel. Her phone vibrated as she reached the jet bridge, a notification lighting up the screen. She glanced down, her lips curving into a faint smile. Acquisition finalized. You now hold controlling interest in GlobalSkies Airways. Board meeting scheduled upon arrival in New York. The timing was impeccable. Every slight, every assumption, every whispered comment she was experiencing today was a microcosm of the culture she targeted for transformation. GlobalSkies had been hemorrhaging customer trust, particularly among minority passengers, with complaints of discriminatory treatment spiking 43% in the past year alone. A viral post on X just last week, tagged #TravelEqual, had accused the airline of systemic bias, igniting a firestorm of criticism. Maya had seen the data, read the stories, and now she was living them. As she stepped onto the Boeing 787, the first-class cabin gleamed with understated luxury. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, and the faint scent of lavender from the amenity kits. The cabin was nearly full, mostly with white male executives in tailored suits, their laptops already open, their champagne flutes already half-drained. Maya's arrival drew glances, some curious, others subtly disapproving, as if her presence disrupted the expected order of things. She stored her carry-on in the overhead compartment with practiced efficiency and settled into seat 2A, arranging her belongings with the precision of someone who'd made this journey countless times. At the aircraft door, flight attendant Claire Bennett stood with a practiced smile, greeting passengers with rehearsed warmth. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said to a businessman in a navy blazer, her tone dripping with deference. "Mr. Davidson, it's a pleasure to have you with us again." Her smile was professional, inviting, a perfect reflection of GlobalSkies. First-class promise. But as Maya approached, Claire's expression shifted, her warmth evaporating. Economy is straight through and to the right, she directed, not even glancing at Maya's boarding pass. I'm into a first class, Maya corrected politely, presenting her ticket. Claire's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched in surprise, her eyes darting between the boarding pass and Maya's face, as if trying to reconcile a contradiction. Let me see that again, she insisted, taking the ticket with the same unnecessary scrutiny Lauren had shown. Maya observed the silent calculation in Claire's gaze, the unspoken question. Asterisk. How does someone like you belong here? Asterisk. Is there a problem? Maya asked after several seconds of inspection, her voice calm but pointed. No, it appears to be correct, Claire conceded, her tone suggesting she found the outcome disappointing. She gestured toward the first-class cabin with noticeably less enthusiasm than she'd shown the previous passenger. 2A is the second row on the right. As Maya made her way to her seat, she caught Claire leaning toward another flight attendant, whispering urgently while glancing in her direction. The second attendant's eyes widened, her expression a mix of surprise and suspicion. How did she get up here? The words carried faintly in the quiet cabin, a whisper meant to be private but not private enough. Maya settled into her seat, her face betraying nothing, but her mind was already at work. The flight hadn't even taken off, and the pattern was clear. A culture of assumptions, of exclusion, of entitlement. This was why she'd bought GlobalSkies. This was what she'd come to change. Across America, the airline industry was under scrutiny. Posts on X had amplified stories of passengers, particularly people of color, facing unequal treatment, from being questioned about their tickets to being denied basic services. The hashtag #TravelEqual movement had gained traction, with activists demanding transparency and accountability. GlobalSkies, already reeling from a class action lawsuit filed by minority passengers, was at a crossroads. Maya's acquisition wasn't just a business move. It was a mission. As the cabin crew prepared for takeoff, she opened her phone, launching an encrypted app designed by NextGen. With a few taps, she began documenting the interactions, her fingers moving with the precision of a woman who knew the power of evidence. The flight to New York would be more than a journey. It would be the opening act in a transformation that would shake an industry to its core. If you've ever faced a moment where your worth was questioned, where your presence was challenged, share your story below. And if you believe in justice, in equality, in the power of one person to change a system, hit the subscribe button and type respect in the comments. This is just the beginning of Maya Thompson's story, and the skies are about to change. The first-class cabin of GlobalSkies Airways Flight 247 to New York was a cocoon of curated luxury. Its plush leather seats and ambient lighting, a stark contrast to the crowded economy section beyond the curtain. Maya Thompson settled into seat. Her movements deliberate, her presence a quiet defiance of the glances that followed her. The cabin hummed with the low murmur of pre-flight routines, executives tapping on laptops, sipping pre-departure champagne, and exchanging small talk about markets and mergers. Yet, as the Boeing 787 taxied toward the runway, the atmosphere around Maya felt distinctly colder, as if her very presence disrupted an unspoken hierarchy dotted the front of the cabin. Claire Bennett, the lead flight attendant, moved with practiced efficiency, her blonde ponytail swinging as she distributed warm towels and flutes of Veuve Clicquot. Her smile was a masterclass in professional warmth, reserved for those she deemed worthy of the first-class experience. "Another glass before takeoff, Mr. Davidson?" she asked the businessman across the aisle from Maya, her voice dripping with deference. The man, engrossed in a spreadsheet, nodded absently, accepting the flute without looking up. Claire's eyes slid past Maya's seat, as if it were empty. her tray of champagne never pausing to offer her a glass. Maya observed the ballet of preferential treatment with a seasoned eye. She'd flown enough miles to know the script, the attentive service, the personalized greetings, the subtle cues that separated valued passengers from those deemed out of place. As a black woman in a sea of white executives, she was accustomed to being the exception, the anomaly. But today, with the weight of her new role as GlobalSkies controlling shareholder, each slight carried a different significance. It wasn't just personal. It was evidence of a culture she'd vowed to dismantle. The seatbelt sign chimed, signaling the final preparations for takeoff. Maya pulled out her phone, opening the encrypted next-gen app she'd used in Part 1 to document her interactions. With a few taps, she noted the time 11:15 Amand and Claire's deliberate omission of her champagne service. The app, a proprietary tool designed by her company for secure data collection, allowed her to timestamp and categorize each incident with precision. As the plane lifted off, the Atlanta skyline shrinking below, Maya's mind was already mapping the patterns. Lauren Mitchell's scrutiny at the gate, Claire's dismissive assumption at the aircraft door, and now this calculated exclusion. Each act was a thread in a larger tapestry of bias, one she intended to unravel. The cabin settled into a quiet hum as the flight reached cruising altitude. Claire and a second flight attendant, Sarah Evans, began their service routine, moving through the rows with a cart laden with premium beverages and snacks. "Would you like almonds or olives with your drink, Miss Anderson?" Claire asked the white woman 3 rows back, her tone warm and anticipatory. The woman smiled, selecting olives, and Claire lingered to discuss the wine selection, her voice carrying the practiced charm of a sommelier. "The Pinot Noir pairs beautifully with the almonds, if you'd like to try it later," she added. Earning an appreciative nod. Maya raised her hand politely, her gesture calm but deliberate. "Excuse me," she called, her voice clear enough to cut through the cabin's low hum. "I haven't been offered a drink." Claire's head turned slowly, her smile faltering for a split second before snapping back into place, now rigid with forced professionalism. "Oh, I must have missed you," Claire said, her tone betraying no sincerity. She approached Maya's seat, her posture stiff, the tray of flutes held just out of reach. "We're a bit short on champagne, but I can get you water if you'd like." The offer was perfunctory, a stark contrast to the effusive service she'd provided others. Across the aisle, Mr. Davidson raised his hand slightly, and Claire materialized instantly, refilling his glass with a flourish. "Another view, sir?" she asked, her warmth restored. "I'd like what everyone else is being offered," Maya said evenly, her eyes meeting Claire's. "Champagne, if it's available." The request was polite but firm, a subtle challenge to the lie that the cabin was short on drinks. Claire's lips tightened, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "I'll check the galley," she said curtly, turning away without waiting for a response. Maya watched as Claire retreated, leaning towards Sarah near the galley curtain. Their voices were low, but the cabin's quiet amplified their words, just enough for Maya to catch fragments. "Think she's entitled to everything," Claire muttered, her tone laced with disdain. Sarah's eyes darted toward Maya, widening slightly before she nodded, her expression complicit. "Some people don't get how first class works," she whispered back, her words carrying a sting that felt all too familiar. Maya's fingers moved swiftly over her phone, documenting the exchange. *1132 Flight attendant Claire Bennett. Refused beverage service. Claimed shortage despite serving others. Overheard discriminatory remarks with colleague Sarah Evans. The app's interface glowed softly, its AI-driven analytics already cross-referencing her notes with GlobalSkies service protocols, which mandated equal treatment for all first-class passengers. Maya's company had built tools like this to uncover patterns in data, And now she was using it to expose patterns in human behavior. The slight wasn't new to her. Over the years, she'd faced countless variations of this performance. The skeptical glances, the delayed service, the whispered assumptions. As a black woman who'd risen from a modest Houston neighborhood to the helm of a tech empire, Maya had navigated boardrooms, airports, and galas where her presence was questioned. But this flight was different. She wasn't just a passenger. Documenting her experience, she was the CEO with the power to rewrite the rules. The weight of that responsibility steadied her, even as the slights accumulated. As the service cart moved to the next phase, offering hot towels and snack pairings, Claire and Sarah continued their selective attentiveness. A white executive, too. Rosa had received a warm towel with a flourish, Claire's voice practically singing as she described the organic cotton sourced from a sustainable supplier. When the cart reached Maya, Sarah handed her a towel without a word, its edges lukewarm, as if it had been sitting out too long. Maya accepted it silently, her eyes scanning the cabin, noting how every other passenger received a smile, a comment, a moment of connection. She was the exception, the invisible seat in a cabin of 16. The pattern continued as the flight attendants distributed amenity kits, sleek packages containing designer skincare, noise-canceling earbuds, and cashmere eye masks. Claire approached each passenger with enthusiasm, explaining the kit's features as if presenting a gift. When she reached Maya, her demeanor shifted. She extended the kit with visible reluctance, her fingers releasing it a fraction too early. The package slipped, landing on Maya's tray table with a soft thud, its contents shifting audibly inside. "Oops," Claire said, her tone devoid of apology. "You'll want to check that before takeoff." She moved on without offering the help, leaving Maya to adjust the kit herself. Across the aisle, Mr. Davidson glanced over, his expression a mix of curiosity and discomfort. He'd noticed the difference in treatment, but like most bystanders, he said nothing, returning to his laptop as if the moment hadn't happened. Maya's composure remained unshaken, but her mind was racing. She opened her app again, adding, *11:48 a.m. amenity kit deliberately mishandled by Claire Bennett. No assistance offered, unlike other passengers. The documentation was methodical. Each entry a building block in a case that would soon shake GlobalSkies to its core. The cabin's atmosphere grew heavier as the flight progressed. The divide between those deemed worthy of premium service and those viewed as interlopers becoming painfully apparent. Maya's phone vibrated with a new notification, a message from her chief of staff. *board is briefed. Awaiting your instructions post-landing. She allowed herself a small, private smile. The crew's actions, their whispered comments, their calculated slights, they were unaware that they were performing for an audience far more powerful than they could imagine. In 2025, the airline industry was under a microscope. Social media platforms like X had become battlegrounds for accountability, with passengers posting videos of mistreatment under hashtags like #TravelEqual and #AirlineJustice. Just last month, a viral clip of a GlobalSkies flight attendant refusing to assist a black family in economy had sparked outrage, leading to a federal investigation into the airline's practices. Maya had studied the data. 43% of customer complaints in the past year cited discriminatory treatment, with minority passengers reporting longer wait times, harsher scrutiny, and outright exclusion. The numbers told a story, but today, Maya was living it. As the seatbelt sign blinked off, signaling the start of full service, Maya pressed her call button to request water. The illuminated button glowed steadily, but Claire and Sarah passed by 3 times, attending to other passengers, whose buttons had been pressed after hers. A white woman 3 rows back pressed her button, and Sarah appeared within seconds. "What can I get for you, Miss Carter?" she asked, her voice warm, her memory of the passenger's name a pointed contrast to Maya's anonymity. "Just a sparkling water, please," the woman replied, and Sarah returned moments later with a glass, a slice of lemon perched on the rim. Maya's button remained ignored, its light a silent rebuke in the polished cabin. After 15 minutes, she pressed it again, the reset forcing a response. Claire approached, her expression one of barely concealed irritation. "Yes?" she asked, omitting the courtesy title she'd used with others. "I'd like some water, please," Maya said, her tone professional but firm. "We'll be starting service soon." Claire replied dismissively, reaching up to switch off the call button. Without waiting for a response. "We serve based on cabin efficiency, not who presses first." The lie was transparent, contradicted by the observable pattern of service. What she meant was clear. We serve those we deem deserving. Maya's fingers moved to her app again, documenting the incident with clinical precision. Asterisk 12:03 p.m. Call button ignored for 15 minutes. Claire Bennett dismissed request, prioritizing other passengers. Asterisk the evidence was mounting. Each entry a step closer to exposing a culture that had festered unchecked for too long. As Claire walked away, Maya leaned back in her seat, her gaze steady, her resolve unshaken. The flight was only beginning, but the stage was set for a reckoning that would change everything. 3 hours into the transatlantic flight, the first-class cabin of GlobalSkies Airways Flight 247 was enveloped in the rich aroma of gourmet cuisine. The meal service, a hallmark of the airline's premium offering, was a theatrical affair. Fine china plates, polished silverware, and linen napkins arranged with the precision of a Michelin-starred restaurant. Through the partially open galley curtain, Maya Thompson could see the flight attendants, Claire Bennett and Sarah Evans, preparing the trays with meticulous care. Their movements choreographed to elevate the dining experience into something extraordinary. The menu boasted seared Wagyu beef with truffle demi-glace, poached lobster with saffron beurre blanc, and a vegan quinoa salad with heirloom vegetables, each dish paired with a curated wine selection. For the $9,000 price of a first-class ticket, passengers expected nothing less than perfection. Maya sat in seat 2. Her posture relaxed but alert, her phone resting discreetly on the tray table. She'd spent the first part of the flight documenting the crew's discriminatory behavior, the skipped champagne service, the mishandled amenity kit, the ignored call button. Each incident, logged in her encrypted next-gen app, was a piece of evidence in a case she was building, not just for herself, but for every passenger who'd been dismissed or demeaned by GlobalSkies' entrenched culture. As the meal service began, she braced for what she knew would come. Another deliberate slight, another test of her resolve. Claire emerged from the galley, pushing an elegant cart adorned with crystal glassware and a sommelier-level wine selection. She stopped at the seat across from Maya, where Mr. Davidson, the businessman who'd received prompt champagne refills, was adjusting his tie. "For our first course, sir, we have poached lobster with saffron beurre blanc or a wild mushroom tart with truffle oil," Claire announced, her voice warm and inviting. "Our executive chef recommends the lobster, paired with a crisp Chardonnay from Napa Valley." Her smile was radiant, her tone a masterclass in personalized service. Mr. Davidson nodded appreciatively. "Lobster sounds perfect. And I'll try the Chardonnay." Claire served him with a flourish, arranging the appetizer on a gleaming china plate and pouring the wine with a professional twist of the bottle to prevent drips. "Enjoy, Mr. Davidson," she said, lingering to ensure his satisfaction. "I'll check back to discuss the main course." The service continued down the aisle, each passenger receiving the same attentive treatment. A white woman, 3 rows back, Miss Carter, was offered a detailed explanation of the wine's vineyard history, while a gray-haired executive was presented with a vegan option tailored to his pre-flight request. The cabin buzzed with the quiet clink of cutlery and murmurs of approval, the atmosphere one of curated exclusivity. Yet, as the cart moved past row 2, Claire's eyes slid over Maya as if she didn't exist, her tray never pausing to offer an appetizer or a glass of wine. Maya watched the deliberate exclusion with a calm that belied the indignation simmering within her. The choreography required to skip her seat, reaching across to serve the window seat passenger beside her without acknowledgement was almost impressive in its audacity. The other passengers, engrossed in their meals, either didn't notice or chose not to. The bystander effect, Maya noted, was as predictable as the crew's bias. She pressed her call button, the light glowing steadily on the overhead panel, a silent demand for the service she'd paid for. The button remained illuminated for 5 minutes, then 10, as Claire and Sarah busied themselves with other passengers. A man 2 rows ahead pressed his button, and Sarah appeared instantly, offering a sparkling water with a lemon slice and a warm smile. Maya's button, still glowing, was ignored. She pressed it again, to reset a quiet assertion of her presence. After 12 minutes, Claire finally approached, her expression one of thinly veiled annoyance, her arms crossed as if Maya's request was an imposition. "Yes?" Claire asked, her tone curt, devoid of the courtesy she'd extended to others. "No, ma'am. No, how can I assist you?" Just a single syllable that carried the weight of her disdain. "I noticed I've been skipped for the appetizer service," Maya said, her voice level but firm. "Every other passenger has been served." She gestured subtly to the cabin, where china plates gleamed on every tray table except hers. Claire's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she masked it with feigned apology. "Oh, I must have forgotten you," she said, her insincerity as palpable as the stale air in the cabin. "We're about to start the main course. I'll see what's available." She turned away without taking Maya's order or offering the menu, retreating to the galley with a purposeful stride. Through the partially open curtain, Maya could see Claire huddling with Sarah and a third attendant, their heads bent together, their glances darting towards seat 2. Claire's voice, though hushed, carried just enough for Maya to catch fragments. "She's making a fuss," Claire said, her tone dripping with exasperation. "Thinks she's entitled to the full menu." Sarah smirked, nodding, while the third attendant stifled a laugh. The casual cruelty of their exchange was a stark reminder of the culture Maya had come to change, a culture where discrimination wasn't just tolerated but normalized. Maya opened her next-gen app, her fingers moving swiftly to document the incident. *12:47 p.m. Skip for appetizer service. Claire Bennett claimed oversight. No menu offered. Overheard derogatory remarks in galley. The app's eye cross-referenced her notes with GlobalSkies service standards, flagging the violation of protocol. As a CEO who'd built her empire on data-driven solutions, Maya knew the power of evidence. Each entry was a step toward accountability, a record that would soon append the status quo. 10 minutes later, as the main courses were being served artfully, plated dishes of Wagyu beef and lobster tail, Maya's tray table remained bare. The aroma of premium cuisine filled the cabin, a cruel contrast to her exclusion. She pressed her call button again, this time 3 times in succession, the insistence forcing a response. Claire returned, her posture rigid, her eyes cold. Without a word, she placed the tray in front of Maya, the clatter of plastic against the tray table jarring in the refined cabin. The tray bore no resemblance to the gourmet offerings around her. Instead of fine china, it was a flimsy plastic tray from economy class, holding a congealed portion of pasta, a slice of stale bread, and a plastic-wrapped brownie that looked like it had been salvaged from a vending machine. The contrast was stark. While others savored their wine-paired meals on polished silverware, Maya had been served what amounted to cafeteria leftovers. The businessman beside her, Mr. Davidson, glanced over, his fork pausing mid-air as he registered the discrepancy. "That's nothing like what I'm eating," he muttered, his tone a mix of confusion and unease. Maya pulled up her booking confirmation. On her phone, displaying the screen with clear notation, * special meal request, lobster tail, confirmed, *. "I pre-ordered the lobster option when I purchased my ticket," she said, her voice steady despite the intentional humiliation. "This isn't what I requested." Claire's response was loud enough for the front rows to hear, her voice dripping with condescension. "We serve what's available, and you should be grateful we found anything at all." The words landed like a slap, their boldness shocking even the passengers who'd been studiously ignoring the scene. "Regular passengers get priority on meal selection," she added, the implication unmistakable. Maya, in Claire's eyes, didn't belong among the regular first-class clientele. The cabin fell silent, the clink of cutlery pausing as heads turned. Mr. Davidson shifted uncomfortably, his earlier indifference giving way to awkward recognition. Miss Carter, 3 rows back, glanced up, her expression torn between sympathy and embarrassment. Maya held Claire's gaze, her composure unwavering. "I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant," she said, her tone professional but unyielding. Claire's posture stiffened, her face hardening into open hostility. "I am the lead flight attendant," she snapped, abandoning any pretense of civility. "And we're all in agreement about passengers who don't belong here. You're making this harder than it needs to be." The words were a verbal assault, a public declaration of bias that stunned the cabin into silence. It was a line crossed, a moment where subtlety gave way to overt discrimination, and Maya knew it was the tipping point. Discreetly, Maya activated her phone's recording function, the device partially concealed by the tray table. The next-gen app's audio feature captured Claire's words with crystal clarity, along with the gasps and murmurs from nearby passengers. "I'm documenting the discrepancy in service," Maya said calmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Federal aviation regulations permit passengers to record their own experiences." Claire's eyes widened, a flash of alarm crossing her face. "Recording crew is against regulations," she declared, her voice rising to ensure the cabin heard. "You need to stop, or I'll report you to the captain for disrupting operations." The threat was hollow, a desperate attempt to regain control, but it only deepened the hole she was digging. "Actually," Maya countered, her tone measured but authoritative, "FAA rules prohibit interfering with crew duties, but documenting my own meal service doesn't qualify. I'm well within my rights." Her citation of regulations, delivered with the precision of a lawyer, seemed to unsettle Claire further. The flight attendant's face flushed, her hands clenching as she struggled to respond. For a moment, the cabin held its breath, the tension palpable as passengers watched the confrontation unfold. Maya's recording continued, capturing Claire's aggressive posture, the stark contrast between her tray and the gourmet meals around her, and the murmurs of discomfort from other passengers. The evidence was irrefutable, a digital indictment of a culture that had gone unchecked for too long. As Claire stormed back to the galley, her colleagues gathering around her in a conspiratorial huddle, Maya added a final note to her app. *102 p.m. public insult by Claire Bennett. Threatened reporting for lawful recording. Evidence secured. The cabin remained tense, the weight of Claire's words lingering like a storm cloud. Maya leaned back in her seat, her expression serene but her mind racing. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a CEO with a mission, and the crew's actions were handing her the ammunition she needed. As the flight continued toward New York, the stage was set for a revelation that would turn the tables and expose the rot within GlobalSkies. The skies were about to get stormier, and Maya Thompson was ready to lead the charge. If you've ever faced a moment where you were publicly dismissed or demeaned, Share your experience in the comments. Hit the subscribe button to follow this story of justice and transformation. The truth is about to take flight. The first-class cabin of GlobalSkies Airways Flight 247 was a pressure cooker of tension, the air thick with the aftermath of Claire Bennett's public insult. Maya Thompson sat in seat 2A, her composure a steel anchor amidst the storm of whispers and sidelong glances. The plastic tray of congealed pasta and stale bread remained untouched on her table, a stark emblem of the discrimination that had unfolded over the past 3 hours. Her phone, discreetly recording, had captured every damning moment. Claire's dismissive service, her condescending remarks, and the final, brazen declaration that Maya didn't belong here. The other passengers, once content to ignore. The slights now shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Maya and the galley where Claire and her colleagues huddled, their laughter replaced by tense murmurs. Maya's next-gen app glowed softly on her phone, its encrypted interface logging. The latest entry, *1:15 p.m. Claire Bennett publicly insulted me, claiming I don't belong in first class. Recording secured, including crew's derogatory remarks. As a tech CEO who built her empire on precision and evidence, Maya knew the power of documentation. Each incident was a brick in the case she was constructing, not just for her own vindication, but for the systemic overhaul she promised herself and the millions of passengers who'd faced similar treatment. The cabin silence was broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional clink of a wine glass. But beneath the calm, a seismic shift was brewing in the galley. Claire's voice carried faintly, her tone now laced with bravado as she recounted the confrontation to Sarah Evans and another attendant, Mark Reynolds. "She thinks she can push us around with that recording nonsense," Claire said, her words sharp but tinged with unease. "I told her how it works up here. She'll learn her place." Sarah nodded, her smirk faltering slightly, as if sensing the line they'd crossed. Mark glanced toward Maya's seat, his expression less certain. "Maybe we should ease up," he muttered. "She's not backing down." Maya's gaze remained steady, her fingers poised over her phone as she prepared for the next move. She'd faced moments like this before: boardrooms where her expertise was questioned, events where her presence was scrutinized, but this was different. As the new controlling shareholder of GlobalSkies Airways, she held the power to rewrite the rules. The crew's actions, their casual cruelty, were not just personal slights. They were symptoms of a culture she'd targeted for transformation. Her acquisition of the airline, finalized just hours ago, was driven by data. A 43% spike in complaints about discriminatory treatment, a viral X campaign under #travel exposing GlobalSkies failures, and a class action lawsuit that had pushed the airline to the brink. Today, she was living the problem she'd come to solve. The cockpit door clicked open, a sound so rare it silenced the galley's whispers instantly. Captain James Carter, a 30-year veteran with a reputation for stoic professionalism, emerged. From the flight deck, his face grave and his posture rigid with tension. In his 3 decades of flying, First Officer Davis had never seen Carter leave the cockpit except for scheduled breaks. His presence now, unannounced and unsmiling, signaled something extraordinary. The passengers looked up, their curiosity piqued as Carter strode toward the galley, his polished shoes clicking against the cabin floor. Claire, Sarah, and Mark froze as Carter approached, his eyes scanning the group with a weight that made them shrink. "Meeting now," he instructed, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority. The attendants exchanged glances, their earlier confidence evaporating as they gathered in the galley, the curtain partially drawn, but not enough to shield them from Maya's view. The passengers nearby strained to listen, sensing the shift in the cabin's atmosphere. "What's happening, Captain?" Claire asked, her tone shifting from defiance to concern. She stood at the center of the huddle, her arms crossed defensively, as if bracing for a reprimand she didn't yet understand. Carter's gaze settled on her, his expression unyielding. "I've just received an emergency communication from Chairman Robert Hayes," he began, each word deliberate, heavy with implication. "Regarding the passenger in seat 2A, the passenger you've been treating as if she doesn't belong here." Claire's face paled, but she clung to her narrative. "Captain, she's been disruptive," she said, her voice faltering. "She was recording us, refusing to follow instructions." Carter cut her off, his tone sharp enough to slice through her excuses. "That passenger," he continued, "is Maya Thompson. As of this morning, she's the CEO and controlling shareholder of GlobalSkies Airways. Your boss, the owner of this airline." The words landed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the galley and into the cabin. Claire's jaw dropped, her eyes widening in a mix of shock and dread. Sarah gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth, while Mark's face drained of color, his earlier uncertainty morphing into panic. The realization hit them like a wave. The woman they'd dismissed, insulted, and publicly humiliated was not just any passenger. She was the most powerful person in their company, with they authority to reshape their futures with a single decision dot in the cabin. The effect was electric. Passengers who'd been studiously avoiding Maya's gaze now turned to stare, their expressions a kaleidoscope of shock, embarrassment, and dawning comprehension. Mr. Davidson, the businessman who'd enjoyed Claire's attentive service, froze. Mid-sip, his champagne flute trembling slightly, Miss Carter, 3 rows back, whispered to her seatmate, her voice barely audible, "She's the CEO?" The cabin's earlier indifference gave way to a collective reckoning, as if the passengers were suddenly aware of their complicity in allowing the discrimination to unfold unchecked. Carter activated the intercom, his voice booming through the cabin with a clarity that demanded attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Carter speaking," he announced, his tone carrying a rare edge of urgency. "On behalf of GlobalSkies Airways, I extend our deepest apologies to our CEO, Ms. Maya Thompson, for the inexcusable behavior of our crew. Ms. Thompson has recently become the majority owner of our airline, and we deeply regret that her first experience as our leader has been so profoundly disappointing." The announcement was a bombshell, shattering the cabin's fragile equilibrium. Passengers exchanged glances, some mortified, others whispering furiously as they processed the revelation. Mr. Davidson set his glass down, his face flushed with discomfort, as if realizing the preferential treatment he'd enjoyed had come at the expense of the airline's owner. A young woman in row 4 pulled out her phone, likely posting the moment to X with hashtags like #AirlineJustice or #TravelEqual, amplifying the incident in real time. Claire rushed toward Maya's seat, her earlier hostility replaced by desperate panic. "Miss Thompson, I had no idea," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Please, it wasn't personal. I was just following protocol." Her words were a frantic attempt at damage control, but they rang hollow, a flimsy defense against the evidence Maya had meticulously gathered. Maya held up a hand, her gesture calm but commanding silence. "That's precisely the problem, Claire," she said, her voice steady, devoid of the anger or vindictiveness the crew might have expected. "It should never be personal. Every passenger deserves respect and proper service, regardless of who they are or what they look like." Her words were measured, but their weight was undeniable, cutting through Claire's excuses like a blade. "Return to your duties. This will be addressed upon landing." The calm certainty in Maya's tone, the absence of gloating or rage, seemed to unnerve Claire more than any outburst would have. This wasn't the reaction of a passenger who could be placated with apologies. It was the response of a leader who'd already mapped out the consequences. Claire retreated to the galley, her face ashen, her colleagues avoiding her gaze as the reality of their actions settled over them like a shroud. The cabin's atmosphere transformed in an instant. Flight attendants, who'd been dismissive or hostile, now appeared at Maya's side, their demeanor shifting to obsequious attentiveness. Sarah offered a glass of Chardonnay with a trembling hand, while Mark stammered through an offer of a proper meal. "Would you like the lobster now, Miss Thompson?" he asked, his voice strained with forced deference. Maya declined with a polite but firm shake of her head, her focus returning to her phone, where she updated her notes. Asterisk 1:25 p.m. Crew informed of my identity by Captain Carter. Attempted belated service. Insincere. Asterisk. The irony wasn't lost on Maya or the passengers now watching with rapt attention. The crew's sudden eagerness to serve her highlighted the core issue. GlobalSkies was perfectly capable of providing exceptional service, but only to those they deemed worthy. The problem wasn't resources, it was bias, woven into the fabric of the airline's culture. As the flight continued toward New York, the cabin remained charged with anticipation, the passengers and crew alike sensing that this was no ordinary incident. Maya's documentation, now a comprehensive record of systemic failure, would soon become the foundation for a reckoning that would echo far beyond the skies. In 2025, the airline industry was a battleground for accountability, with passengers using platforms like X to expose mistreatment in real time. The #TravelEqual movement had gained momentum, fueled by stories of discrimination that mirrored Maya's experience. As the plane soared over the Atlantic, Maya knew her story was about to join that chorus, a catalyst for change in an industry desperate for redemption. The crew's assumptions, their arrogance, their casual cruelty, they'd made a critical mistake, and the consequences were coming. As GlobalSkies Airways Flight 247 began its descent into John F. Kennedy International Airport, the first-class cabin remained steeped in an uneasy silence. The revelation of Maya Thompson's identity as the CEO and controlling shareholder had shifted the atmosphere from one of casual privilege to a charged anticipation of consequences. In C2A, Maya sat with her trademark composure, her phone resting on the tray table where the untouched plastic tray of economy class pasta still lay, a silent testament to the discrimination she'd endured. Her next-gen app, now a digital vault of evidence, contained detailed notes and audio recordings of every slight, from Lauren Mitchell's gate scrutiny to Claire Bennett's public insult. As the plane's wheels touched down on a tarmac, Maya prepared for the next phase of her mission, transforming a personal injustice into a catalyst for systemic change. Through the cabin window, an unusual scene unfolded. Beyond the standard ground crew, a fleet of black company SUVs lined the taxiway, their tinted windows glinting in the late afternoon sun. 2 NYPD patrol cars, lights flashing silently, flanked the vehicles, while a cordoned-off section of the terminal hinted at an unprecedented reception. The board of directors and executive team of GlobalSkies Airways stood in a somber line, their tailored suits a stark contrast to the gravity of their expressions. This was not the celebratory welcome they'd planned for their new CEO, complete with champagne and photographers. Instead, they awaited an aircraft where their leader had been publicly humiliated by their own staff, an incident now poised to explode into a media firestorm. Inside the cabin, the standard post-landing announcements were conspicuously absent. Captain James Carter, who delivered the bombshell revelation mid-flight, took the intercom himself, bypassing the flight attendants who remained huddled in the galley, their earlier bravado replaced by palpable dread. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at JFK," Carter said, his voice steady but tinged with tension. "Please remain seated until instructed otherwise. Thank you for flying GlobalSkies." The omission of the usual cheerful farewell was telling, a signal that protocol had been UPEND. Claire Bennett, Sarah Evans, and Mark Reynolds stood in the galley, their faces ashen as they whispered frantically. Claire's hands trembled slightly. Lily's hands trembled slightly. Her earlier confidence shattered by the realization that she'd insulted the airline's most powerful figure. "What do we do?" Sarah hissed, her voice barely audible. She recorded everything. Mark shook his head, his eyes fixed on the floor. "We didn't know," he muttered, as if ignorance could absolve their actions. Claire's lips tightened, her mind racing for a defense. But the weight of Maya's authority and the evidence she held was an undeniable dot as the aircraft doors opened. Protocol was abandoned. Instead of the usual first-class deplaning, Captain Carter approached Maya's seat, his demeanor one of quiet respect. "Miss Thompson, we'd like you to exit first," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'll escort you, personally." Maya nodded, gathering her belongings with the same composed dignity she'd maintained throughout the ordeal. She stood, her charcoal suit impeccable, and followed Carter to the jet bridge, the eyes of the cabin on her back. The passengers, once complicit in their silence, now watched with a mix of awe and discomfort, their phones poised to capture the moment for platforms like X-Dot at the gate. The flight crew was instructed to line up, their name badges glinting under the terminal's fluorescent lights. Claire stood at the center, her gaze fixed on the floor, unable to meet Maya's eyes. Sarah's hands fidgeted nervously, while Mark's face was a mask of resignation. The contrast between their current demeanor and their earlier arrogance was striking, a visual representation of accountability catching up to privilege. Chairman Robert Hayes stepped forward, his public apology echoing through the terminal. "Ms. Thompson, on behalf of GlobalSkies Airways, I express our profound apologies," he said, his voice carrying to the gathered staff and onlookers. "This is not what our company stands for, and there will be immediate consequences." His words were formal, but his expression betrayed the urgency of a leader facing a crisis that could define the airline's future. Maya removed her tablet from her handbag, accessing the recording she'd made during the flight. The footage played with devastating clarity. Claire's dismissive service, her condescending remark about regular passengers, and the public insult that Maya didn't belong here. The audio captured every word, every smirk, every whispered conspiracy in the galley. As the video played, Maya gestured toward the terminal monitors, where security specialists had accessed the aircraft's internal cameras. Additional footage appeared, showing angles of the same incidents: Claire skipping Maya's seat, Sarah's complicit nods, the deliberate exclusion from the meal service. The surveillance system, designed for passenger safety, had become an unyielding witness to the crew's misconduct. "There's more," Maya said calmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the terminal. "This isn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a culture that's been allowed to fester." Her words were measured, but their impact was seismic, a promise that the reckoning was only being dotted a nod from Chairman Hayes. Transportation Security Administration, SAE officers, boarded the aircraft, accompanied by GlobalSkies' legal team. They emerged moments later, escorting Claire and Sarah to a private area for questioning. The public nature of the process conducted, in view of deplaning passengers and terminal staff, was a departure from the airline industry's usual practice of handling incidents behind closed doors. Mark, though not directly involved in the public insult, was also detained for his complicity in the galley discussions. The crew's faces, once smug, now reflected a dawning realization of the consequences: suspension pending investigation. With potential criminal charges for violating passenger rights, the terminal buzzed with activity as journalists, tipped off about a situation at JFK, descended on the scene. Cameras flashed, capturing the unprecedented sight of uniformed flight attendants being questioned by TSA, executives in crisis mode, and Maya Thompson standing at the center, her composure unshaken. Within minutes, the incident exploded across X, with hashtags like hashtag airline justice and hashtag travel equal trending as passengers from the flight posted their accounts. A young woman from row 4 tweeted a blurry photo of Maya exiting the plane. Captioned, asterisk, just watch GlobalSkies CEO get humiliated by her own crew. This is huge. Hashtag travel equal asterisk. Another post from a passenger in economy who'd overheard the intercom announcement read, asterisk, the crew messed with the wrong woman. She owns the airline. Hashtag airline justice asterisk. The viral spread was fueled by the dramatic power reversal. A crew that had assumed impunity, targeting the very person with the authority to hold them accountable. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines like, GlobalSkies CEO faces discrimination on her own flight and airline cruise bias exposed by new owner. The footage from Maya's recordings, shared anonymously with a major news network, began circulating, its clarity and context undeniable. By the time Maya reached the terminal's private reception area, the incident was a national conversation, resonating with millions who'd faced similar treatment but lacked the power to fight back. Maya faced the microphones thrust toward her, her voice steady as she addressed the gathering media. What happened on this flight wasn't an anomaly, she said, her words carrying the weight of her mission. It's the product of a culture that normalizes discrimination. That culture ends today. Her statement, concise but powerful, became the soundbite of the evening news, amplifying the call for change in an industry under scrutiny. In 2025, the airline industry was a lightning rod for social justice debates. The hashtag travel equal movement had exposed countless stories of passengers, particularly people of color, facing unequal treatment, from boarding delays to outright exclusion. GlobalSkies, already reeling from a class action lawsuit filed by minority passengers, faced a reckoning that could redefine its future. The lawsuit, citing a 43% spike in discriminatory complaints, had pushed the airline's stock to a 5-year low, making Maya's acquisition both a strategic move and a moral imperative. As she stood in the terminal, surrounded by executives scrambling to contain the fallout, Maya knew this was her moment to lead. Chairman Hayes addressed the assembled staff and media, his voice firm. Effective immediately, the crew of Flight 247 is suspended pending a full investigation, he announced. We are cooperating with TSA and law enforcement regarding potential violations of passenger rights. The statement was a signal that GlobalSkies was taking the incident seriously, but for Maya, it was only the beginning. Her tablet, still in hand, contained a blueprint for the cultural overhaul she'd planned. Training programs, diversity initiatives, and AI-driven accountability systems. The evidence she'd gathered was the spark. The transformation would be the fire. As the media frenzy grew, Maya stepped into one of the black SUVs, her chief of staff waiting with updates. The board is ready to meet, he said. They're shaken, but they know this is your call. Maya nodded, her eyes fixed on the terminal where passengers continued to stream out, their phones capturing the chaos. The story was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told they didn't belong. As the SUV pulled away, she opened her next-gen app one final time, adding, *4:32 p.m. landed at JFK. Incident exposed. Change begins now. The fallout from Flight 247 reverberated far beyond the tarmac of JFK International Airport, its echoes rippling through newsrooms, social media feeds, and corporate boardrooms across America. In the days following the incident, Maya Thompson, the newly minted CEO and controlling shareholder of GlobalSkies Airways, stood at the helm of a company teetering on the edge of a public relations abyss. The viral X posts, trending under hashtag airline justice and hashtag travel equal, had transformed her personal experience of discrimination into a national call for accountability. The footage of Claire Bennett's public insult, coupled with the airline's internal camera recordings, had become a rallying cry for passengers who'd long felt dismissed or demeaned. For Maya, the incident was not just a scandal. It was an opportunity to rewrite the rules of an industry plagued by systemic bias. In the sleek, glass-wall boardroom of GlobalSkies' New York headquarters, Maya faced a room of executives. Their faces a mix of apprehension and reluctant admiration. The board meeting, scheduled immediately after her arrival from JFK, was no ceremonial welcome. It was a reckoning. Maya stood at the head of the table, her charcoal suit as impeccable as her resolve, her tablet open to a detailed plan she drafted in the hours following the flight. "This isn't about one flight or one crew," she began, her voice steady but commanding. "It's about a culture that's been allowed to fester for years. We're not here to patch a leak. We're here to rebuild the foundation." The executives exchanged glances, some shifting uncomfortably. Chairman Robert Hayes, still reeling from the media frenzy, nodded in agreement. "Ms. Thompson, we're fully behind you," he said, though his tone betrayed the pressure of a plummeting stock price and a looming class action lawsuit. "What's your plan?" Maya tapped her tablet, projecting a series of slides onto the boardroom's digital screen. The first slide displayed a damning statistic. 43% of customer complaints in the past year cited discriminatory treatment, with minority passengers reporting delays, scrutiny, and exclusion at triple the rate of their white counterparts. The second slide outlined her vision, a comprehensive overhaul of GlobalSkies culture, rooted in 3 pillars: training, diversity, and accountability. "We start with education," she said. "Every employee, from baggage handlers to board members, will undergo mandatory anti-discrimination training. No exceptions. The training program, developed in partnership with leading diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI experts, was launched within weeks. Designed to address unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and equitable service delivery, the program was rigorous and immersive. Employees participated in workshops that simulated real-world scenarios, including role-plays based on Maya's own experience on Flight 247. In one session, a facilitator replayed the audio of Claire's remark, "Passengers who don't belong here," prompting heated discussions among staff. "I didn't realize how words like that could land," admitted a veteran flight attendant during a session, her voice heavy with regret. "We thought it was just banner." Maya herself attended several sessions, not as a figurehead but as a participant, sharing her story to humanize the impact of bias. "I was in seat 2A with a $9,000 ticket and platinum status," she told a room of ground crew workers in Atlanta. "But to that crew, I was invisible because of how I looked. That's not a mistake. It's a system we've allowed to exist." Her presence, coupled with her willingness to engage directly, shifted the tone from compliance to conviction. Employees began to see the training not as a corporate mandate, but as a moral imperative. The second pillar was diversity hiring. GlobalSkies' workforce, particularly in premium cabins and executive roles, had long been criticized for its homogeneity. A 2024 X thread under hashtag #TravelEqual had highlighted the airline's predominantly white flight crews, with only 8% of attendants identifying as people of color, despite serving a diverse passenger base. Maya's initiative aimed to reshape this demographic. She partnered with recruitment agencies specializing in underrepresented communities, launching a campaign to hire flight attendants, pilots, and executives from diverse backgrounds. By the end of the first quarter, 25% of new hires were people of color, and women made up 40% of leadership roles, a stark contrast to the previous year's 15%. The transformation was visible on flights. Passengers boarding a GlobalSkies route from Los Angeles to London noticed a new diversity in the crew: Black, Latino, and Asian attendants working alongside their white colleagues, their name badges reflecting names like Amara, Javier, and Priya. It's like the airline finally looks like its passengers. A frequent flyer posted on X, her tweet garnering thousands of likes. Maya's team also introduced mentorship programs for minority employees, ensuring they had pathways to advancement. This isn't about quotas, Maya told a CNN interviewer. It's about reflecting the world we serve. The third pillar, accountability, was where Maya's tech expertise shone. Leveraging next-gen analytics AI capabilities, she introduced a passenger feedback system that used machine learning to analyze complaints in real time. The system flagged patterns of discriminatory behavior, cross-referencing them with crew schedules and flight data to pinpoint problem areas. For example, when a cluster of complaints emerged about a specific route, the AI identified a recurring issue with a particular crew's service disparities. This led to targeted retraining and, in some cases, disciplinary action. To ensure transparency, passengers could now submit feedback via an app, with responses guaranteed within 48 hours of first. In the industry, Maya also mandated the installation of additional onboard cameras, not for surveillance, but for accountability. If we're serious about change, we need to see the truth, she told the board. The cameras, equipped with AI to detect service inconsistencies, became a deterrent for biased behavior. A pilot program on transatlantic flights showed a 60% reduction in service-related complaints within the first month. The technology wasn't without controversy. Some employees bristled at the increased oversight, and a few ex-post criticized it as Big Brother in the skies. But Maya countered in a public statement. Accountability isn't punishment. It's a commitment to fairness. The results were staggering. Within 3 months, customer satisfaction among minority passengers soared by 90%, according to internal surveys. Complaints about discriminatory treatment plummeted by 95%, and overall customer satisfaction across all demographics rose by 42%. The numbers told a story of transformation, but the real impact was felt on the ground. A Black family boarding a flight to Chicago was greeted with genuine warmth. Their children offered activity kits without hesitation. An elderly Asian couple in first class received the same wine pairing recommendations as their white seatmates. It's like a different airline, a passenger tweeted. Tagging #AirlineJustice, the transformation wasn't without resistance. Some veteran employees, accustomed to the old ways, pushed back against the training, grumbling about woke policies. A leaked email from a former manager, shared on X, complained that Maya's reforms were ruining the airline's prestige. But the data and the public were on her side. GlobalSkies' stock price, which had dipped after the Flight 247 scandal, began to recover, climbing 15% in the first quarter as investors recognized the value of a customer-centric turnaround. The class action lawsuit, once a looming threat, was settled with a commitment to fund day initiatives, turning a liability into a legacy. Maya's leadership extended beyond GlobalSkies. The high-profile nature of the Flight 247 incident triggered a ripple effect across the airline industry. Competitors like Delta and United rushed to implement similar training programs, fearing their own #travel equals scandals. A trade association announced new standards for passenger rights, mandating annual bias audits for all major carriers. Maya was invited to speak at an industry summit, where she shared her vision. An airline isn't just a mode of transport. It's a microcosm of society. If we can't treat people equitably at 37,000 feet, how can we do it on the ground? Back at GlobalSkies, the cultural shift was palpable. Employees who'd initially resisted began to embrace the changes, inspired by Maya's hands-on approach. During a training session in Dallas, a baggage handler approached her, his voice quiet but sincere. "I used to think this stuff didn't matter," he said. "But hearing your story, knowing you were treated like that, it made me see things differently." Maya nodded, her smile warm but resolute. "That's why I'm here," she replied. "Not to shame anyone, but to show what's possible when we do better." As the first quarter closed, Maya stood at her office window, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Her tablet displayed the latest metrics: a 20% increase in bookings, a 50% surge in positive X mentions, and a flood of applications from diverse candidates eager to join a company redefining itself. The incident on Flight 247 had been a spark, but the fire it ignited was reshaping an industry. Yet, for Maya, the work was deeply personal. She thought of her childhood in Houston, of the promises she'd made to her mother after their own humiliating flight experience. The next step wasn't just corporate, it was a return to those roots, a chance to connect the past with the future she was building. The Houston sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the modest neighborhood of Sunnyside, where rows of single-story homes stood as quiet sentinels of resilience. It was a late summer evening in 2025, and Maya Thompson stepped out of a sleek black SUV, her polished heels sinking slightly into the cracked pavement of her childhood street. The air carried the familiar scent of jasmine and grilled barbecue, mingling with memories of a life that had shaped her. This was where she'd grown up, in a small brick house with a sagging porch, where her mother, Eleanor Thompson, had raised her on a domestic worker's wages, dreaming of a future her daughter now embodied. For Maya, the return wasn't just a homecoming. It was a reckoning with the promises she'd made as a child, promises that had driven her to transform GlobalSkies Airways. The house, now renovated but still bearing the bones of her past, stood at the end of the block. Maya paused at the gate, her tailored suit a stark contrast to the faded lawn chairs on the porch. Her tablet, ever present, was tucked away in her bag. For this moment, she didn't need data or evidence, just the weight of memory. She'd come far from this street, rising from a scholarship student to the CEO of NextGen Analytics and now the controlling shareholder of GlobalSkies. But the incident on Flight 247, the public humiliation that had gone viral under #AirlineJustice, had brought her back to the root of her resolve, a childhood promise to change how people like her were treated. Inside, Eleanor Thompson sat at the kitchen table, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun, her hands folded around a mug of chamomile tea. The room smelled of lemon polish and nostalgia, the same Formica countertop where Maya had done her homework under her mother's watchful eye. Eleanor's face lit up as Maya entered, but her eyes held a knowing depth, as if she sensed the weight her daughter carried. "You're home," Eleanor said softly, rising to embrace her. "And you're making waves." Maya smiled, the warmth of her mother's arms grounding her in a way no boardroom could. "I had to come back, Mama," she said, settling into a chair. "After everything that happened, I needed to remember why I started." The kitchen felt smaller now, but the memories loomed large. Nights studying by lamplight, her mother's stories of resilience, and a pivotal moment that had defined Maya's path. "Do you remember that flight when I was 8? Maya asked, her voice soft but steady. Eleanor nodded, her eyes clouding with the weight of recollection. It had been a rare family trip, a business-class flight to Chicago, paid for with months of her father's overtime as a mechanic. The excitement of the upgrade had been shattered when a flight attendant, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, directed them to the back of the plane, claiming their tickets were a mistake. The humiliation, the sting of being told they didn't belong, had seared itself into Maya's young mind. "You told me that day," Maya continued, "that some people's pictures of the world were too small to include us where we belonged. And I promised you I'd change that. Eleanor's eyes glistened, her hand reaching for Maya's. I told you something else, too, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I said you'd have to be twice as good, work twice as hard, to make them see you. And you did more than that, Maya. You didn't just succeed in their world, you changed it. The words landed like a quiet victory, a validation of the journey from Sunnyside to the helm of GlobalSkies. The incident on Flight 247 had been a mirror of that childhood moment, but this time, Maya had the power to rewrite the ending. The viral X posts, the media frenzy, the sweeping reforms, she turned a personal slight into a movement. But here, in this kitchen, it wasn't about headlines or hashtags. It was about honoring the woman who'd sacrificed everything to give her a chance. The next day, Maya stood at the center of the Sunnyside Community Center, a modest building packed with neighbors, local youth, and activists drawn by her story. The event, organized by a grassroots group tied to the #TravelEqual movement, was a chance to share her journey and inspire the next generation. The room buzzed with anticipation, teenagers in hoodies mingling with elders in Sunday best. There, phones ready to capture the moment. Maya, dressed in a simple blazer and jeans, stepped to the podium, her presence commanding yet approachable. I grew up right down the street, she began, her voice carrying the cadence of home. In a house where my mother taught me that dignity isn't given, it's earned through resilience. When I was 8, a flight attendant told my family we didn't belong in business class. Last month, another told me I didn't belong in first class. But this time, I wasn't just a passenger. I was the one who owned the airline. The room erupted in cheers, a wave of pride washing over the crowd. A teenage girl in the front row, her braids adorned with beads, raised her phone, live streaming on X with the caption, *Maya Thompson is one of us. #AirlineJustice*. Maya shared the story of Flight 247, not just the discrimination, but the transformation that followed. She spoke of the training programs, the diverse hires, the AI-driven accountability systems that have reshaped GlobalSkies. This isn't about one airline, she said, her eyes sweeping the room. It's about building a world where no one has to fight to be seen. She paused, her gaze settling on a young boy clutching a notebook. I see you, she said, her voice soft but fierce. And you belong wherever your dreams take you. The crowd rose to its feet, the applause echoing through the center. Afterward, Maya stayed for hours, talking with kids about their aspirations, engineering, medicine, aviation. She handed out cards for Next Gen Scholarship Program, launched to support underrepresented students in STEM. A local activist, Tamika Jones, approached her, her voice trembling with gratitude. You've given us hope, she said. Not just for better flights, but for a better future. Maya nodded, her heart full but her resolve unshaken. Hope is a start, she replied. But we're building systems to make it last. As she left the center, Maya walked back to her childhood home, the stars now visible in the Houston sky. She stood on the porch, her mother joining her, their silhouettes framed against the night. You didn't just keep your promise, Eleanor. Sobbed, her voice soft with pride. You made it bigger than I ever dreamed. Maya squeezed her mother's hand, the weight of her journey settling into a quiet certainty. The girl who'd once been sent to the back of the plane had returned to lift others forward, and the view from here was clearer than ever. In 2025, communities like Sunnyside were at the heart of a broader movement. Grassroots organizations, amplified by platforms like X, were empowering young people of color to demand their place in industries long close to them. Maya's story, shared through viral posts and community events, became a beacon for those fighting for equity. As she prepared to return to New York, she carried with her the voices of her neighbors, their dreams fueling the next phase of her mission. The skies had changed, but but the ground beneath her feet, where it all began, was where she found her strength. 1 year after the infamous Flight 247, Maya Thompson boarded a GlobalSkies Airways flight retracing the same Atlanta to New York route that had sparked a revolution. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 787 gleamed with the same polished luxury. But the atmosphere was markedly different. The crew, a vibrant mix of backgrounds Black, Latino, Asian, and white, moved with a genuine warmth that transcended the scripted polish of premium service. A young black flight attendant named Amara greeted Maya with a smile, offering a glass of champagne with the same enthusiasm she extended to every passenger. "Welcome aboard, Miss Thompson," she said, her name badge catching the light. "It's an honor to have you with us." Maya returned the smile, noting the absence of scrutiny, the presence of respect. The skies had changed, and she was no longer an outlier in seat 2 as the plane climbed to cruising altitude. Maya gazed out the window, the clouds stretching like a canvas of possibility. The past year had been a whirlwind of transformation, not just for GlobalSkies, but for an industry forced to confront its biases. The incident on Flight 247, amplified by ex-posts under #airline justice and #travel-equal, had become a case study in corporate accountability, taught in business schools and diversity training programs across the globe. Maya's reforms, anti-discrimination training, diverse hiring, and AI-driven accountability had turned GlobalSkies into a beacon of equitable service, with customer satisfaction scores soaring to the top of the industry. But for Maya, the true measure of success was the stories she heard. Passengers who felt seen, employees who felt empowered, communities that felt hope. The transformation began with GlobalSkies, but rippled outward. Competitors, wary of their own #travel-equal scandals, adopted similar measures. Delta launched a diversity task force, while United mandated bias training for all staff. A trade association, spurred by the public fallout from Flight 247, introduced industry-wide standards for passenger rights, including annual audits to monitor service disparities. The class action lawsuit against GlobalSkies, once a threat, had settled with a historic agreement to fund scholarships for underrepresented youth in aviation, a nod to Maya's own journey from a Houston scholarship student to a tech titan. The statistics were compelling. GlobalSkies' market share grew by 18%, bookings surged by 20%, and minority passenger satisfaction hit 92%, a record for any major carrier. Maya's influence extended beyond numbers. At the company's annual meeting in New York, held in a sleek Manhattan conference center, she delivered a speech that would be quoted for years. The room was packed with executives, employees, and industry leaders, their eyes fixed on the woman who turned a scandal into a legacy. Transformation isn't about replacing one form of preferential treatment with another, Maya said, her voice resonant with conviction. It's about creating systems where human dignity isn't determined by appearance, position, or power. True equity isn't achieved when we treat people equally only after discovering they're important. It's when we treat everyone with respect because we recognize that everyone is important. The applause was thunderous, but Maya's focus was on the faces in the crowd. A young black pilot who'd joined through her mentorship program, a Latina gate agent who'd risen to supervisor, a passenger advocate who'd shared her own story of discrimination on X. These were the real victories, the human threads in a tapestry of change. The speech, live-streamed on X, garnered millions of views, with comments flooding in. Asterisk, Maya Thompson is rewriting the rules. An asterisk, this is what leadership looks like. #airline justice, asterisk. Back on the flight, as the crew served a gourmet lobster tail identical to the one Maya had been denied a year ago, she reflected on the journey. The cabin buzzed with the quiet harmony of equitable service. A white executive received the same attentive wine pairing as an Asian couple, while a black family in economy was offered extra snacks with a smile. The cameras Maya had installed, discreetly monitoring service consistency, ensured that no passenger was overlooked. The NextGen app, now integrated into GlobalSkies' feedback system, allowed passengers to report experiences in real time with AI analyzing patterns to prevent bias before it took root. The airline wasn't perfect, but it was a model of what was possible when intent met action. As the plane descended into JFK, Maya's thoughts turned to the broader implications. In 2025, America was at a crossroads, grappling with the legacy of systemic inequities while embracing new tools for change. Platforms like X had empowered passengers to demand accountability, amplifying voices that had once been silenced. Grassroots movements like #TravelEqual were reshaping industries, from aviation to tech, proving that collective action could shift power. Maya's story, born from a single flight, had become a symbol of that shift, a reminder that one person, armed with vision and evidence, could challenge a system and win. The humanitarian lessons of Maya's journey were profound. Her story was a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice, and the necessity of systemic change over superficial fixes. It showed that dignity is not a privilege reserved for the powerful, but a right owed to all. Maya's reforms at GlobalSkies demonstrated that ethical treatment and business success were not mutually exclusive. Equity could drive profit, loyalty, and trust. Her return to Houston, her connection with her mother and community, underscored the importance of roots, of remembering where you came from as you forge a new path. Above all, her journey was a call to action, to challenge bias wherever it appears, to amplify the voiceless, and to build systems that uplift everyone. As the plane touched down, Maya stepped off, greeted by a crew member who handed her a note from Amara, the young flight attendant. "Thank you for making this job mean something," it read. Maya smiled, tucking the note into her pocket. The skies had changed, but the work wasn't done. She was already planning the next phase, expanding NextGen's AI tools to other industries, mentoring young leaders, and supporting community initiatives like the one in Sunnyside. Her legacy wasn't just a transformed airline. It was a blueprint for a world where everyone belonged. This story, like so many others, lives on through the Legacy Stories channel, where tales of courage, justice, and transformation inspire. Use to dream bigger. If Maya's journey moved you, if her fight for equity resonates, hit the subscribe button and join us for more stories that challenge the status quo. Share your thoughts in the comments. How has someone's resilience inspired you to act? Let's keep the conversation alive, because every story of change starts with a single voice. Subscribe to Legacy Stories and soar with us into a future where dignity is universal.